running a small business with Plone. I knew what it was. I was just... Okay, so anyway, I have a few logistical announcements. Russ Faraday has helped us out a bit, tremendously actually, with upgrading the firmware on one of our wireless routers that we set up. So please try to connect to Plone 2008 and hopefully experience marginally better internet. If anybody wants to help, I'll be probably working on this for the next 3 days, you know, putting routers in various places. Talk to Russ and we'll coordinate. Without further ado, and actually, Sally will be up in just 2 minutes.
While I'm getting set up, if people would like to move forward, that would be really, really great. Then I can actually see you. Shall we get started? Is this an okay volume level for people who actually want to be listening? Is that a better volume level? Okay. Yell at me if I go too far away. Actually, maybe I'll do this. Can't really do that. It's attached. Ah. Will there be feedback if I use this? No? Okay, cool. All right, great. So my name is Sally Kleinfeld. I work at Jazzkarta. We're a firm that specializes in open source technology, web applications. We do hosted solutions, consulting services, training and support. We're Plone's Open Python experts. We have 3 full-time staff, 5+ part-time staff, and our staff are distributed across multiple locations. I'm actually fairly new to Jazzkarta. I just joined about 3 months ago, so a lot of the stuff I'm going to be talking about is fairly new to me. But Jazzkarta's founder, Nate Ani, is right in the audience up front here, so the more in-depth questions will have the opportunity for more in-depth answer. So Plone is our business. Our income comes mostly from Plone-based products and services, and we use our own products and services to run our business. So it's our business kind of in 2 senses of the word. I'm going to talk about 3 sort of aspects of running a business: the sort of operations side, day-to-day operations side, marketing, sales activities, and then the all-important customers. So in operations, you know, there's sort of the finance side of things, records management, and we're pretty traditional in that regard. We use QuickBooks, which I spelled wrong, sorry. But in our day-to-day work environment, we're not quite so traditional. We all have home offices, and some of us have shared workspaces. We sort of don't have a traditional bricks and mortar workplace. So when you have a distributed work environment like that, communication and collaboration become really key to getting things done effectively. Tools like email, chat, calendars, document sharing, all those kinds of things. And we use Google Apps to solve a lot of those sort of day-to-day operational tasks. With Google Apps, you get your own domain, jazzkarta.com. You get Gmail, chat, calendar, docs and spreadsheets, Google Sites, Google Start page. You can search, that famous Google search, across all of your personal content. The standard edition, which is what we have, is free. The price you pay is little ads on the side of your email messages. The Premier edition is $50 per user per year, and educational institutions and nonprofits get some special deals. You guys are probably all very familiar with this stuff, so I'm just going to whip through it for anybody who maybe hasn't thought about some of these tools, or for some of the newer tools. Gmail, everybody knows about. Really nice UI, great search. I just want to pull your point your attention towards the bottom of that search, you notice it's pulling in some, it's searching my chats as well as my emails. It'll also search my documents, so it's really nice to be able to search everything kind of in one fell swoop. Google Calendar, another great tool. You can share your calendars selectively with different levels of permissions. Supports the iCal standard. Google Docs, I'm going to have a couple slides here. I wanted to point out that it's really useful for our internal document sharing and collaboration, but it's also really useful for customers. So the first document is just shared with my colleagues Aaron and Nate, but the second document is shared with several of our customers because we've been actually working on this collaboratively with customers. So you have total control over who you share with, the permissions and such, and it's really easy to sign up for a Google account, so that's not a big deal for our customers. You can have this really nice collaborative editing tool, especially with the spreadsheets. It's really great. Two people can be editing at the same time, so that gray box kind of on the left-hand side is where Aaron is editing a cell, while I'm over on the right-hand side in the blue box editing my own cell. You can actually make changes simultaneously to the same document. It's really pretty slick. You can also turn spreadsheets into web-based forms. This is just a picture of their form editing tool. You define the fields that you want, what all their little labels are, the choices, etc. And at the end, you come out with a URL that you can post to the web, either just give people that URL or embed it in a page. And of course, now with Google Gears, you're not just restricted to doing your work when you are online. You can work offline as well, which is very handy, especially today, right, guys? We also use another handy little tool that I just thought I'd mention because I think it's really great. I'd never heard of it before coming to Jazzcarta. It's called Dropbox, and it essentially kind of has a little file system piece that it shares with you. So here I'm on a Mac, and you see a Finder window that looks just like any other Finder window, but the Dropbox folders and files have a special little icon. A green check mark means I've finished syncing it with any changes, and a little blue circle thing says, oh, this is out of date with what might be on the great server in the sky somewhere. So that's handy for things like Keynote and Pages presentations or Word documents, whatever, things that Google Docs doesn't handle so nicely, which is its own kind of word processing format, spreadsheets and PDFs. It handles very well. So just a little tip. You also get with Google Apps the start page, the Google start page. It's customized per user, sort of like a personal dashboard. I'm sure you know there's just hundreds and hundreds of cool little gadgets that people have invented that you can pull in, for fun type stuff, as well as you can pull in all your Google Documents, your calendar, all your Google content, of course, any RSS feeds you're interested in. And down at the bottom, actually, Sales Sleuth is an interesting sort of preview of something to come. Your Salesforce installation, you can also show information from that. We'll talk about that more in a bit. We've also, a fairly new feature of Google Apps is something called Google Sites, which is essentially a bunch of web pages that you can design. You can use it to make a little company intranet. It's very easy to just edit something like a web page, and also you can pull in content from your Google Documents and spreadsheets, of course. So here we have a little staff page that's pulling in our staff roster from a Google spreadsheet. All right, well that's really cool, but what does it have to do with Plone? Well, it's a set of building blocks that we can use in our business. Google, of course, provides very rich APIs for all of these applications that are just available for you to do whatever kind of integration you want to do with them. Some examples, very, very easy, no API required to just embed one of those Google Forms on a Plone page. Another example is to import a Google Calendar, using the iCal standard into a plone calendar. And I'll certainly be talking about more examples later, but I'll just show you just a quick view of our events page on our website, which is pulling from our public Jazzcarta Google Calendar into plone and posting those events. Okay, so that was sort of the spiel about operations, and now I'm going to turn attention to the marketing and sales side of the picture. We do our marketing pretty much on the internet, plus word of mouth, like at conferences here, through our website, through advertising, and through emails. Then I'm also going to talk about managing customer relations and a little bit about managing sales. So, for our website, we use Plone. It's a full-featured content management system that lets us put up all the rich content that our heart desires with a marketing slant, product, services, news, events, as you saw, all that stuff. There are lots of add-ons to add lots of great features. It's secure, it's robust. I don't need to give you any reasons. If you're here at this conference, you know why it's great. And it's the thing that provides our public persona. Hosting of our Plone site is kind of an interesting story. Of course, like everybody else, we want reliable, scalable hosting and servers that are easy to manage. And how we achieve that is with this thing that we're calling Plone in the Cloud. We host our site, jazzcarta.com, and some of our other sites that we'll see later on Amazon EC2. We use Build Out and Fabric for deployment. So Build Out, you guys are all hearing a lot about, and you probably either already know about it or you're about to learn a lot more about it, and I won't talk about that. But Fabric is this cool little Python tool that makes it very easy to do server deployments. It's kind of like super shell scripts or something that you can essentially kind of securely give it all your passwords for like SSHing here and FTPing there and doing all the stuff that you need to do. And so you don't have to constantly be remembering what password you have to use to log into that server, et cetera, et cetera. Handles all that very nicely, makes things very quick. The data.fs and the Apache logs use Amazon's Elastic Block Storage, which is much the faster kind of storage. And the backups, our regular backups of our Plone site, use S3 storage, which is a little bit slower and kind of more reliable, more backed up backups, I guess. We use 5 virtual servers, 1 running Apache Pound and Varnish, 1 running Zio, and 3 clients. And there's a picture of all this. So up at the top in orange is the public-facing server running Apache Pound and Varnish. And then down below in the chartreuse, I guess, are the kind of private servers, well, 1 for each client and 1 for the Zio server. And then in the blue, over on the right-hand side, is the Elastic Block Storage for the Apache logs and for the data.fs, and then the backups at the bottom on S3. Okay, moving on to advertising, we use Google AdWords, and I'm really not going to say very much at all about Google AdWords. I essentially just started using it a week ago, and it's a really big thing that there's obviously a lot to learn about, but it'll play a little bit into some of the things we see later. So just a screenshot of Google AdWords, you get campaigns and various AdWord groups, and you turn them on and off, and it's got a whole lot of capabilities. For emails, we use a tool called Vertical Response, which has just really nice features for managing bulk emails, being very careful with your, unsubscribe capabilities. It gives you this nice interface for editing with, being able to insert like first name and company name and all that kind of thing. So managing emails, constructing them, links from them, and then sending them to lists, and we'll see more about this later, and keeping track of what happens. For our customer relationship management tool, we use Salesforce, which is kind of a best-of-breed hosted solution, software as a service solution. The thing that's really cool about Salesforce, and you'll be hearing more about this at the conference in a bunch of different places, is that it has this very powerful API that promotes integration with other systems. So the basic idea with Salesforce, I mean, it's a database, a relational database where you manage your contacts, leads, accounts, campaigns, business opportunities, all those kinds of business kind of objects that you would want to capture data about and relationships between. You can manage that in Salesforce. And because of that very nice API that they provide, it comes out of the box with all these things already integrated via that API. It's integrated with Gmail, so you can send emails to a contact or a lead directly from Salesforce and capture the email that you sent, right there in Salesforce, so you remember what you said. It's integrated with Google Docs, so you can associate proposals or contracts that you've written that are probably PDFs that you store on Google Docs. You can associate those with the appropriate entities in Salesforce. It's got an integration with Google AdWords. Remember how Google AdWords has the concept of campaigns? Well, so does Salesforce. So you have, from within that same UI, you can associate your Google campaign with your Salesforce campaign and manage the information. It's integrated with vertical response. So as you can guess, creating your mailing list from leads or from campaigns is really easy. And it's also integrated with PayPal. So if you've got products that you're offering for a certain price, for example, you can set that up to have the payments go through PayPal integrated with Salesforce, so you do that bookkeeping and then can later export it to QuickBooks. So that's cool. It doesn't come out of the box integrated with Plone, but it does have this great API, and there have been a number of very clever people that looked at that and said, this is a great idea, particularly the people at One Northwest. So there is a very straightforward, at this point, very robust way to integrate Salesforce and Plone. There are sort of three pieces to that picture. There's a connector where you essentially set up like a database connector, your account and your password and that kind of thing. Then you'll use Plone Form Gen to create whatever form you want to have. And then you use this thing called the Salesforce adapter, which is kind of the interface between the form that you set up and the fields in the Salesforce database. And I'm not going to talk very much about this. I'm going to skim through it pretty quickly. But if you'd like to see more details, I recommend you go to Andrew Burkhalter's talk at 9:30 tomorrow, where he's going to go over this in much more detail. I am, however, going to show you an example just kind of from the UI point of view of a Plone Salesforce vertical response kind of front-to-back integration. So we're going to use a Plone form to capture our prospective customer's interest. The data from that form is going to go into a Salesforce lead, a lead that's been customized with some certain fields that we want to capture that don't come out of the box with Salesforce. That's really easy to do. We're going to add leads to a campaign that we have, a Salesforce campaign, and then we can use the campaign, or we can use a set of leads that we kind of interactively select to send targeted information to, email targeted information to, be they training announcements, product announcements, newsletters, whatever it is that your business has that it wants to contact its customers about. Your leads will have all sorts of information about what the customer's interests are that you've captured from the Plone forms, and so you can send just the right information. All right, so now we're just going to walk through this. Here's our support page, and down in the bottom you see a little contact us for more information link. So we're going to click on that link, and we're going to get to a form to capture that interest, where you fill in your name, phone number, and the specific interests, and whether or not you want to opt into getting our newsletter. When you click the submit button, first I'm just showing you under the hood what that UI interest form consists of, and now we're looking at the contents tab of that object, and you can see that it essentially has a little object for each of the fields: first name, last name, telephone, email, etc. It's got a separate little object for the thanks message it's going to give you afterwards, and it's got a mailer object to deal with emails, but it's got at the bottom this special thing, the Salesforce adapter, which is going to do the interfacing with Salesforce. And basically what that lets you do is map between the fields on your form and the fields in Salesforce. And if you see services underscore C and newsletter underscore C, those are our custom form fields that we added to Salesforce. And there are tons of fields that come out of the box with Salesforce. So you could have a far more complicated form than this and capture a lot more information. We're essentially kind of hard at the lead type. What type of services they're interested in is sort of is a hidden field, because in this case they've already said they're interested in our support plan, so we can fill that out for them. You know, we're of the minds that they should have to do as little typing as possible. So that's what that looks like. And then when you hit the submit button, it's going to go into Salesforce and create a new lead. And this is the Salesforce, the hosted normal Salesforce UI. We're on the Leads tab, and you can see that the first lead at the top, its most recent first, is that new lead I just added. And we go click on that lead, and we see this is like the first possibly quarter of a screen's worth or more of information about that lead. And you can see my newsletter opt-in I checked, and the type of services support there. Those are our 2 custom fields, and all the other information that we filled in is captured there. We can create campaigns from leads qualified by the type of services. So maybe we want to make a campaign for an upcoming training class. We can look for all the leads that have expressed an interest in training, create that campaign. You can see a few campaigns up there, and then clicking on the campaign, you can get to a screen where you manage adding your members to your campaign, which you can do from contacts, from leads, from importing, comma-separated value files, etc. Once we have that, now we can go to vertical response. As I said, vertical response it comes with Salesforce, so looks like just a whole nother little set of Salesforce tabs, our vertical response information. So the vertical response email tab is where you manage emails that you want to send and the lists that you want to send them to. Clicking on the lists, view current lists, you can see that some of our lists, well, the second list comes from a Salesforce campaign, so you can just specify a Salesforce campaign for your list. You can also, again, just upload comma-separated value lists of emails and create lists that way. And as I just briefly mentioned, vertical response does a great job of managing, once you've actually sent the email, managing all sorts of information about it, whether it bounced, whether the person clicked on any of the links, which links, how many times, all that sort of stuff is tracked for you. So that is a pretty great set of tools for attracting customers. And now I'm going to talk about the customers that we have. Most of the work we do is we use flexible scope projects where we're using some kind of agile methodology. And we have, at any one time, we'll have multiple customers and projects going, multiple developers, multiple project managers. So it's kind of a lot of stuff to manage. And how we do that is with a project management tool called ClueMapper. You can think of it as a supercharged track. For those of you who are familiar with Track, it's a kind of best-in-breed, open source and Python-based issue tracking and other stuff tool that is really popular in our community. And this takes Track and lets you have a view across multiple projects. Our ClueMapper, again, servers are hosted on Amazon EC2. ClueMapper gives us each a personal dashboard, which will gather together all the projects and all the tickets, say, for example, that we are watching or that we are responsible for, et cetera, across all the projects. It adds an additional nice web-based management stuff, so you don't have to go to the command line and do track admin at all anymore. You also get an Ajax-y sort of UI for entering time. And if you're interested in learning more about ClueMapper, Nate is giving a lightning talk at the end of the day today, and I'm not sure when they start at 5. So show up for the lightning talks and you'll hear more about ClueMapper. Just a couple pictures. This is that personal dashboard that I mentioned. There are all our projects, and there are my tickets, tickets I'm watching, and then there's more, of course. So that kind of brings that all together, because I'm sure you guys, a lot of you work on multiple projects, and track is very project-centric in its focus, so it's really nice to have a way to get a bigger picture than that. And then at the project level, we also have some additional tools, like particularly around time tracking and rolling up time by milestones, by developers. So this really helps us in terms of invoicing customers and of invoices that freelance consultants invoice us with their time. It all kind of comes together here. Some future plans for ClueMapper. There are some very mature time tracking products, and it probably makes sense if you want a lot more sophistication in your time tracking features, rather than just a fairly simple, here's my estimate, okay, log 2 hours, log another 15 minutes, log some more hours, which is essentially what ClueMapper does for you. If you want like a lot of stuff around time tracking, there's some very nice solutions. Harvest is a hosted solution. SlimTimer is a track plugin, so we're thinking about integrating those into ClueMapper. And then those tools already have integrations with QuickBooks, so making the whole process flow from our developers and project managers, et cetera, tracking their time right into the invoices that we send to our customers. So in conclusion, Plone plus Salesforce plus Google Apps plus ClueMapper makes for a really powerful combination of all the things we need to do. We use Plone for the things that it does fantastically well, which is all the stuff around content management, our public-facing website. We could use it more for intranet and extranet capabilities. We haven't yet. We haven't really had a need yet, but that's certainly a possibility too. But the really important thing to us is to use Plone for what it does well and not think of it as a hammer, as the thing that you hammer any nail with, or whatever that expression is that I'm messing up. Use other best-of-breed components and integrate them with Plone rather than trying to make Plone do everything. So choose the right tool for the task at hand. And questions?
How do you deploy Plone to the EC2?
So the question is, how do we deploy Plone to EC2? Nate, you want to cover that? You could do it like a lot more depth than I could.
Okay, so first a plug for David Bain's talk. I think tomorrow or the next day, he's going to be talking, sort of walking you through how to deploy your Plone site to EC2. But basically, it's like any other Linux box that you might purchase as a dedicated server. The difference is that these are virtual machines. So Amazon says, well, you shouldn't really trust your data to the server because it could go down at any time. So the way we've gotten around that in the past is by backing up to the S3, which is a persistent data storage. But now they just, like a week or so ago, they introduced this elastic block storage, which does actually give you a persistent data store. So we would be storing the DataFS, you would be storing the DataFS file on that volume, so if that virtual machine did go down for some reason, you'd still be able to just start up another one and get your data. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Sort of a follow-up on that. So when you set that up,
Repeat the question.
Is MySQL available, or what sort of database?
Okay, the question is what database do you use when you use EC2? Is that? So Plone comes with its own database, the ZODB, unlike other content management systems that depend on a relational database. But you have the same problem that you want to have that database running on a server that's, you know, capable, has enough computing power. So you can't really just stick the ZODB on S3 because it has to be a machine that, you know, is able to service those requests. So the database is running on the same machine where you're running your plone site, but you could also, like what we've done is split it out. So you have like or you have two EC2 instances, one running the ZO client and one running the ZO server, but they're on the same private network. So that way you're not paying bandwidth charges, you know, because it's all within the same EC2 network.
Actually, can I add to that?
Sure.
And just to add to that, if you needed MySQL, you could deploy MySQL. It's essentially like you're given a clean slate. You're given a clean Unix box, and you install whatever you need to and want to on it. In our case, we don't install a relational database, but you could.
Why did you choose EC2 instead of static server, which I guess you have service?
The question is why choose an in the cloud kind of serving option instead of having our own iron, so to speak. And it's basically a far more cost-effective, you know, hugely redundant, reliable situation than we could possibly buy with our own you know, budget. So basically, I thought it was really interesting when I joined Jazzcarta to come to a company that was doing all this stuff on all these servers, but didn't have any servers. So it's, you know, our Google Apps, Google hosts, our Salesforce hosts, our, you know, vertical response does it. The things that we write, we host on Amazon EC2. The only server we have runs QuickBooks, and it's basically off the net, you know. So it's a really interesting way to be able to scale your company to whatever size you want or need to really easily without having all those hardware headaches.
I can just add to that. I mean, the main thing that we like about EC2 is that you can procure one of these machines within a matter of minutes. So rather than having to go down to a co-location facility and say we want to put another hardware, you know, another server in, and we want to add some more disks to it, you just fire up a new instance. And if you're expecting, let's say you're making a big press release and you're expecting a lot of traffic to your site, you can just fire up some additional EC2 instances, and, you know, whether that burst of traffic, let's say you get slash-dotted or something, and you're gonna, you know, your site will go down unless you add additional capacity. You can just have the machines running, you know, until you see the traffic dying down, and then bring them down, and you only pay for the hours that you're actually using the EC2 instance. So there are significant cost savings if you're in that kind of situation. Now, if you're just running a single plone site, the cost savings are maybe negligible, you know, between getting a dedicated server versus buying an EC2 instance and renting it.
Follow up, do you, your customers, do they also, do you deploy your customer side EC2?
Yeah, we're actually announcing here at the conference a new service that we're offering called Plone CMS, which is going to offer a sort of all-in-one Plone hosting package that includes the support, the maintenance, you know, best-of-breed products for Plone that have all been certified. We actually have some brochures just right outside the door here, and I'm happy to answer any other questions that you guys have about that. Here. You had a question? Okay. Yeah.
Actually, the gentleman in the back first.
I might be jumping the gun on a talk later today, but I'm just curious what your all's thoughts are on using Google Apps as a service and its stability. Will it be there tomorrow, or, you know, what are the risks involved in that? What have you thought about on that?
Okay. Should I take that?
We can both talk about that. As far as Gmail is concerned, which is probably our heaviest usage comes from there, I feel pretty confident that that'll be around for a while. It also does offer, you know, capability to export your mail if you ever want or need to. Similarly with Docs, it's a pretty popular application. It's really easy to get your stuff off of there if you need to. The other things are a little more experimental. Well, calendar is pretty solid. Again, it's all, you know, it's all exportable because of the way they've set things up with these APIs that provide for you to integrate any which way. It's, you know, it's almost like it's there and it's everywhere, sort of. You need it to be.
We've been using all the Google apps now, I think, for over a year. And I think I've only seen it down maybe once or twice. And it was for just a matter of minutes. So I'd say the stability, reliability is outstanding. And you're using Google's own technology and their infrastructure, you know, which is powering a lot of the internet, you know, so they know how to make things scale, they know how to make reliable applications. So I feel fairly confident having our infrastructure on top of Google's infrastructure.
Well, I wasn't thinking as much as their infrastructure, but just the business model. And I don't know what kind of guarantees they have, but just as opposed to open source you can implement yourself, if they decide to start charging an arm and leg for it, if they get bought out by someone else, that end of things.
Let me summarize that question because I think it's a really good one. What about the business model aspect of it? In other words, sort of betting our company on this proprietary solution instead of an open source solution to I guess summarize it.
Yeah. Well, open source gives you a lot, right? You can roll your own, you can set up your own server, you can install it, you can be certain that all your data is, you know, secure. You don't have potentially people snooping on your data. But I run a small business. I don't have a big IT department that can manage a bunch of servers and, you know, apply the latest security patches and do all the stuff that's necessary to really maintain a reliable infrastructure. The other thing I like about Gmail is that you have sort of collaborative filtering of spam. So I get maybe 1 or 2 spam messages a day that actually come in my inbox, and all the rest go into my spam box. And that's because Gmail is using humans to flag spam through all the people that are using Gmail throughout the entire world. So that's a really great way to combat spam, versus if you were to set up your own email server at your organization, I'm guessing you would probably have a lot more than 1 or 2 spam messages a day.
Not to mention the tools you'd have to keep running to deal with the spam. Oh, next.
Yeah, I have a question, Kim. I'm actually like hearing these different things, like, you know, why use EC2, why, you know, Google Apps, and like, are there questions about that? What I'm wondering, sort of generally, do you have like criteria that you use for evaluating tools? Because we all know there's like, you know, maybe hundreds, if not thousands of tools out there. You know, and I'm not talking about like a specific one, like generally, how do you decide which tools to use?
The question was, how do we evaluate the tools and choose the tools that we use? Because, of course, there are tons of potential tools out there to choose from.
That's a good question. We don't really have a formal process at this point. I wish I could say that we did. But I've probably tried out about 15 different project management tools before I decided that really we wanted to build on top of an open source tool that we could extend and build to our own needs. And that was after trying a lot of different commercial products that I thought, you know, the same way I think about Gmail and Salesforce, that, well, why build something when there's already a product that does what we want? But we couldn't really find a project management tool that worked in the agile way that we work, that we could extend. And so we ended up developing our own on top of Track. But I think, you know, to answer your question as far as how we evaluate things, sometimes it's trial and error. Sometimes the only really way you know if a tool works is to try it out. That can be costly sometimes. If you try out a tool, you're midstream through a project and you realize, oh, this tool isn't really working. But sometimes that's the only way you can really tell for sure if something is going to meet your needs. But I read a lot of reviews, you know, online, see what other people say about things before I make a decision to use something.
Question was, have we tried Sugar CRM at all?
Yeah, I did install Sugar CRM and played around with it for a little bit, but again, it's rolling your own solution. I mean, it is open source, and you can set it up relatively easy. There's even virtual machines for Sugar, so you don't even have to install it. But really, what it came down to is that Salesforce had the APIs, it had the integration with Plone, thanks to One Northwest. So for us, it was kind of a no-brainer. I mean, it's the best in breed hosted CRM tool out there, and the integration with Plone is really what sort of tipped the scales for us.
How do you get your managers to use all these different tools? As far as I see, you have like 3 different programs managing data. That's Google Mail, that's Salesforce,
I'll take that one.
Yeah.
The question was, how do we get our staff to use all these different tools? And it was a really interesting experience for me coming on board. But because the Google Apps suite is so well integrated, really once you start using Gmail, and really a lot of us already have Gmail accounts for our personal email anyway, so there's no like big learning curve there. You kind of just, all those others are right there waiting for you at, you know, the little links at the top there. We've definitely used Gmail, Docs, and Calendar very heavily, and that absolutely kind of rules what we do, and everybody just has an account, and if you want to schedule meetings, that's how you schedule meetings. So it's really, that's not an issue. The sites and start page are kind of newer features that are more experimental for us, and we were also experimenting. We have experimented with at least 2 or 3 different wiki solutions for having little private, you know, collaborative pages like that. And there is still the open possibility of adding an intranet, you know, a private section of our own plone site. So I would say that we don't have as clean a solution, you know, an answer there, and that has been the part that's been a little frustrating for me. Is that document in Google Docs or in Dropbox? Or did we talk about that in the wiki? Or so that's just the kind of thing that takes some, you know, organizational maturity, I would say, to latch on whatever your business process is so that you know what's where. But that's definitely the document management and kind of wiki company information piece is the rough spot. Salesforce, though, I mean, if you're dealing with customers at all, you just use Salesforce. I mean, that's what you use to manage all the contact information, the opportunities, all the information about, you know, and as far as proposals and contracts, those things are, although they're on Google Docs, their locations are managed within Salesforce, so that's definitely cleaner. And ClueMapper, I mean, just a lot of our developers are used to using Subversion and Track. That's just the way we all work. So that was no issue. And ClueMapper is essentially just enriching that environment that we all were already used to working in. I don't think any one of us came from an environment that wasn't a Track Subversion environment anyway. So that was a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think there's a big temptation to get this all-in-one tool, you know, something that does everything. You just install this thing and it solves all your business problems. But really, the reality is that different tools have very specific needs, and they do one thing and they really do it well. So the key is to integrate those different tools and try to get them to talk to each other. And, you know, being able to get Plone to talk to Salesforce, being able to get Salesforce to talk with vertical response for our email campaigns, being able to get Google Calendars and Gmail to integrate with Salesforce, and being able to add Docs and Google Docs into Salesforce. Like, all those integration pieces help us to use the best tool for the job, but not have barriers between those. They don't become silos of data, is that all the data can be shared between these different tools.
I would also just add that it also means that we are using, for our day-to-day work, we're using the same technology that we're providing to our customers. So we're not just providing some hypothetical thing and making it up out of our heads and maybe it works well, maybe it doesn't. We're providing our customers with the things that we know work well, so another reason there. Yes?
I've used Salesforce and vertical response about 2.5 years ago. And at the time, at least, when you have a list that comes from a Salesforce campaign, if you added new leads to that campaign, when you go to send the next message out, you have to make sure that you sync the list again. Is that still the case, or is it, if you add a new lead to a campaign in Salesforce and you sync out on that campaign,
This is a specific question about a Salesforce vertical response integration issue that if you add leads to your Salesforce campaign, you have to have an explicit step to sync the list into vertical response when you use that list again. And the question is it still that way? And I don't know.
Yeah, I can't answer definitively because we're still fairly new to vertical response. We've only sent out a couple, like 2 campaigns. But I believe that that you can set up a campaign in Salesforce, and then you can tell vertical response to use that data, from that Salesforce campaign. And if you add a new person into that campaign, then that person will get added into the vertical response mailing.
So the link is between the vertical response and the campaign rather than a list of leads, perhaps, yeah. Other questions?
Track extension you were talking about, is it going to be released as open source or is it your company's specific
Yeah,
The question was whether ClueMapper, the track extension, is going to be released as an open source solution.
It is already an open source solution. You can find it at cluemapper.org, and we are actively developing it right now. It's a fairly small community of developers. It's basically Rocky Burt who's doing the bulk of the coding, and then we're trying to recruit other people. So if you're looking for a tool like this for your company, we want to get other people involved. We're also considering opening up ClueMapper as a hosted service for people that don't want to do all the infrastructure, setting up and maintaining it and updating it. We just, similar to Salesforce, we'd give you a login and you can just use the software.
Looks like we're out of time, so thank you very much. If you have any more questions, just come on up front and we'll try to answer them. Thanks. Hey.